and we're waiting on the revisor, and we'll get started.
Chairman. Chairman.
I was just notified that we do have Charles Reimer online as a reviser that can help us start the bill hearings while we're waiting on Kyle. So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order and open the hearing on HB 2719. Charles, would you want to attempt at explaining this, or would you rather have Clay Barker, who's here to testify? Would you like him to explain what the bill does?
Chairman, I'd be happy to go through it quickly, and then I'm sure he can go through it more in length.
All right, Reviser Reimer.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. So House Bill 2719 is brought to you by the Secretary of State's office. It makes a number of changes to the law pertaining to rules and regulations. The first section of the bill pertains to a new provision that allows technical amendments to an existing rule or regulation to be adopted immediately upon review and approval by the Department of Administration. So the first section there is a new procedure that permits rapid adoption of simply technical amendments to existing rules and regulations. The second section is also a new procedure, and this pertains to rules and regulations that an agency believes should have priority status. And when an agency designates a rule and regulation as a rule or regulation that should have priority status, that rule would be processed ahead of any other proposed rule and regulation currently in process by the adopting agency, the Department of Administration, the Attorney General, the Department of the Budget, or the Secretary of State. Priority status is defined a little bit further on in the bill in section 4 on page 4. And priority status means a proposed rule or regulation that an agency has been directed to adopt by an act of the legislature within 9 months of the act's effective date, or that has specified the adoption of such rule or regulation shall receive priority status. So you can see there that designation of a rule or regulation as a priority so that it receives that special rapid processing and handling is at the discretion of the legislature. So another thing the bill does here on page 2 is clarifies that records, state disposal records, disposition of public records, disposal schedules are not rules and regulations. So you can see that by striking such other in the middle of the section there, and also striking the phrase, the disposal schedule shall be filed by the board of the Secretary of State. So the effect of those changes are that, just to clarify, that disposal schedules with the State Records Board are not rules and regulations. Moving on to a little bit further in the bill to page 6, we have between striking some language there on page 6. Well, actually on page 6, what we're doing is we're distinguishing between a public record regarding the hearing and the economic impact statement. Under current law, there's a provision that when you're filing a rule and regulation with the Secretary of State, an agency is to include as part of the economic impact statement a record about the hearing, and that language is stricken. So there's no need to mix up the record of the hearing with the economic impact statement. A little bit further down on page 8, of the bill, section 6. There's some cleanup language there with respect to when an agency files a rule and regulation in the office of the Secretary of State, and also for submission to the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules and Regulations, removing a reference to new matter is supposed to be indicated by underlining or printing in italics, or striking printing in italics. So you just indicate new matter by underlining, strike deleted matter by strike through. It also removes some references to reviving and a rule and regulation, which I believe is not used anymore. There's a new provision a little bit further on down the bill that requires, that's on page 11, that requires a notice before an agency submits to the Department of Administration. So before the first step in the rule process, if one turns to page 11 of the bill, there is a process for at least 15 days prior to submitting any new rule or amended rule and regulation to the Department of Administration. State agency is to provide public notice and request for public input, and certain requirements for that, notice requirements, and also the substantive content of that public notice. And that's on page 11 of the bill. And then there's a sort of a corollary provision that if a public hearing is held prior to adoption of the rule, then that public hearing record is to be filed with the Secretary of State sort of toward the end of the process, and that you can find on page 14 of the bill. A lot of the bill is cleanup. For example, page 14, there's some cleanup regarding the Secretary of Corrections and rules and regulations or other cleanup provisions throughout the bill. But that is essentially the main items that this bill contains, Chairman.
All right, Charles, thanks so much for going through the bill. Committee, any questions on what the bill does? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Charles. We'll go ahead and open the oral proponents, and that's Clay Barker from the Secretary of State's office. Welcome back to Commerce, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clay Barker, General Counsel, Kansas Secretary of State. And I'll preface before I go through the bill briefly, because I know we're short on time. 2 years ago, I told the majority leader if there was one thing we'd like to get done in the session, it was fixing some of the regulation issues or improving the regulation process. We provided some ideas to the interim committee, and three provisions, we got a green light to go ahead and write up a bill. And as we did that, we also got a lot of cleanup provisions, which is why there's so many pages in this bill, but most of that is small cleanup fixes that other agencies brought to us. And I don't believe there are any opponents to this. We did shop it around to the other agencies involved in the regulation process. And part of the reason it's hard to change the regulation process is there's no state agency in charge of it. There's an agency that writes the reg, then you have Department of Administration, Attorney General, Budget, and the Secretary of State, and then it comes out. And so we try to take the lead on this. So of the three supplemental new changes, probably the first and most important is early public notice that a regulation is coming out. Right now, an agency will write a regulation, give it to the Department of Administration, and it bounces around usually for 9 months before it gets into a final draft form, and only at that time is it made public. So the public can see the whole final draft. 60 days later, there's a public hearing, and then it becomes enacted regulation. And usually by the time you get to the public hearing phase, the agency, it's kind of like being on the 5-yard line. You are so close to being done, even if the public has a good point, you don't change your draft. You get that done and maybe amend it later. Also, with temporary regulations, there is no public notice. It comes out and it goes to the State Rules and Regulations Board, and the public may get 1-day notice. So what this provision does is it says 15 days before you start the process, an agency must put out a summary paragraph explaining what they're doing with the regulation, generally how they plan to do it. The agency has to put it on its webpage. Every legislator will get an email with that summary paragraph so you can start giving input. And it goes on the Secretary of State's listserv. And we have a listserv where anyone in the public can check off an agency, and anytime that agency has a regulation, you get an email letting you know. And that way the public can start giving input early in the process that might shape how the final regulation comes out. The second change is the technical amendment. We got this idea from some other states, and that is for 7 very discrete, small changes, things like changing contact info, the name of an organization, a statute, internal statutory reference that's changed, or just a typo in the document. As long as it doesn't change the substance, it can go to the Department of Administration, be approved, and that change can take place immediately. Right now, agencies don't change these small mistakes because they just don't have the time and resources to go through a year-long process to do the change. I don't know how often that'll be used, but it's a way of getting the regulations updated so the public can use them better. The third change is how the legislature would designate a regulation for priority treatment. Right now, the legislature usually puts a date. The agency shall adopt a regulation by date X. The problem with that is the agency doesn't control when the regulation's adopted. It starts the process, and there's a bunch of stuff in the middle, and then it comes out at the end. And the revisor did a great job of wording this well. If the legislature puts a date that is within 9 months of enactment, or simply says this is a priority, that is a directive to all the agencies in the process if this regulation goes to the top of your inbox or the top of your to-do list. Other regulations will fall behind. Most agencies right now just do them in the order they've received. So this lets the legislature tell the process to speed up for a particular regulation. Now, the cleanup provisions, and these were added on once other agencies heard we were doing this bill. On the record retention schedule, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but every government document has a retention provision. It tells you who keeps it and for how long and what to do at the end of that period. Shred it, give it to the archives, whatever. Those were never treated as regulations. They aren't treated as regulations now, but a few years ago, a specific exemption saying those are not regulations was removed. And I'm not sure if that was an oversight or just the legislature assumed that those aren't regulations. But the regulation or the retention board was always a little concerned, like, are these supposed to be regulations? And there are thousands of them that are updated constantly. This just clarifies the status quo that they are not regulations. And the other cleanup provisions, and I'll just go over them briefly if there are questions. 4 times we clarified that the director of the budget does not have to approve every regulation. There are certain ones that are exempted, and we did that usually by saying approved by the director of budget, comma, if required, comma. 3 times we clarified that the record of the public hearing and the economic impact statement are not the same record. They're 2 separate records, though sometimes it's written as if they were one and they needed to be attached to each other. Both important, but separate. 1 time we edited how a regulation is amended, how it's marked. We underline changes while the legislature makes them italics. These are small things. Removed a reference to reviving a regulation, which is a process that hasn't been used in 30 years. 1 time we clarified an inconsistent provision where one said the Department of Corrections is never exempted from regulations, another one said certain orders from wardens are exempted from regulations. So we clarified that exemption stands. 1 correction to a statute typo. Removal of 1 provision that talked about the legislature ordering an agency to adopt temporary regulations, which the legislature doesn't do. And we repealed 1 statute that was 1 sentence that was completely redundant with other things in the law already that just clarified that didn't create a different duty than what's already in the law. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Thanks, Clay, for going through that. All right, committee, are there any questions? Representative Wessinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to tell the Secretary of State's office, and in particular, Mr. Barker, how much I appreciate you trying to streamline rules and regs, as having been on the committee for 8 years. I also want to thank you for getting rules and regs online, because most legislators are not aware of the fact that so many rules and regs are in place and they're actually trying to take the place of legislation, but we could never search them because everything is on paper. So you can't ever see anything that's might be going to a greater level until now. And when, Mr. Barker, will that be effective? Where we can search any regulation? When will that system be done?
Representative, you're referring to the ESPR contract. It was supposed to be done in March, and they asked for I guess, a 2-month delay to May, but it'll be this year. I don't know if the legislature will still be in session when it goes fully online, but we'll let everyone know.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a great step. There's so many things that didn't need to be going before joint rules and regs. And it is important for us to see where they are, because we've had so many times that agencies, whether it's budget, AG, administration, you didn't know where things were stuck. You didn't know where things were. And as the one of the chairs of Joint Rules and Regs, we never could see what they were even proposing. So this ESPR system will also show what's in the proposal queue as well. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for being here, and I appreciate this bill. I suggest everybody vote for it and get it through. Thank you.
Sounds like we know who's going to carry it. Representative Osmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. Does this apply to rules and regulations moving forward, or what is the applicability to those that are already in the pipeline right now when this bill passes?
Representative, the provisions that could apply to an ongoing reg would apply, but for instance, the early public notice wouldn't apply because that requires you to put that out before you submit it to the Department of Administration.
That's generally what I wanted to find out is what modifications need to be, if this goes into law, what modifications need to be made to anything that's in the pipeline at the moment? I guess that's my general question.
Bear with me a second, Representative. So the early public notice wouldn't apply unless it's new. The technical amendment would apply immediately if an agency needed to make a small fix. The priority regulation, it's defining how the legislature indicates a regulation needs to be priority. So that would have to wait for legislation to use it. And all the cleanup provisions would go into effect immediately. And Mr. Chair, if I may make a comment, Representative Washington, back in, I guess, November and December, started looking around for where all the regulations were in the process. And at our office, we thought it was humorous how many emails we got from different agencies asking us where their regulation was, because they knew she was searching for it. And they'd say, well, I submitted it 6 months ago and we changed staff and we don't know where it is now. And these provisions don't address that problem directly. It's something we're very aware of, and that's where this new ESPR online system, which doesn't change any of the process, it just makes it online, should help out a lot, if that's what you were discussing, Representative.
Okay, thanks for that. Committee, any more questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other proponents here? I'm not showing any. Seeing none. We do have a written only. I'm not showing any opponents. Are there any opponents here or any neutral here? All right, seeing none, we'll close the hearing on HB 2719 and open the hearing on HB 2596, permitting the Secretary of Corrections to enter into certain contracts. Charles Reimer with an explanation of what the bill does.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. So as the committee is aware, under current law, the Secretary of Corrections is prohibited from establishing or maintaining any kind of home building program which would compete with manufactured homes or modular homes manufactured in the private sector. There is an exception under current law for the vocational building program. This bill adds another exception for any contract authorized by a statutory site. And if one looks at that statutory provision, it provides that the Secretary is authorized to contract with a private individual corporation business for work projects involving assembly, processing, fabrication, or repair of parts or components for goods or products being manufactured or produced by the contracting party. So the bill adds another exception to the general requirement that the Secretary of Corrections cannot compete with the private manufactured home and modular home industry. Chairman.
All right, committee, any question on what the bill does? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Reimer. I'm going to open the proponent section, and first up, we have Representative Kyler Sweely. Welcome to Commerce Committee, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Tarwater, Vice Chair Ward, Ranking Member Sawyer Clayton, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 2596. This legislation modernizes the Prison Made Goods Act to allow the Secretary of Corrections to enter contracts for the production of manufactured and modular homes. House Bill 2596 is not simply about corrections policy, it is about addressing real economic and housing challenges that are facing our communities. Kansas is experiencing a number of challenges as our communities, particularly in rural areas, attempt to address housing shortages. Rising construction costs, aging housing stock, and workforce shortages in the building trades are further hampering the ability to address the housing shortage problem in a significant way. And I'm going to speak in my experience with my own community, but this would be allowed to go all over the state in any of the corrections facilities. In my own community, the city of Hutchinson loses an average of 11 houses per year to demolition due to age, deterioration, or uninhabitable conditions. That means that each year we are losing more housing units, often affordable units, than we are replacing. This is not unique to Hutchinson. All across Kansas, communities are dealing with shrinking housing inventory while employers struggle to attract workers who cannot find attainable places to live. If we continue to lose housing stock without increasing production capacity, affordability pressures will continue to grow. Expanding in-state production capacity, manufactured and modular homes are one way we can make significant headway in addressing the problem. These homes are built to HUD or state standards, ensuring quality construction, completed on faster production timelines, and price based on lower per unit cost compared to traditional site-built homes. House Bill 2596 would allow Kansas to responsibly explore increasing its in-state production capacity through structured correctional partnerships. This bill does not mandate production. It simply removes outdated statutory barriers and provides flexibility to enter contracts when appropriate. And this is just an example of one of the current work programs at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility. It's not very compared to the housing market at all, but at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility, individuals are participating in structured work programs earn on average between $20,000 to $40,000 per year, depending on their roles and hours worked in this one specific position. From these wages, they are required to pay state and federal income taxes, pay room and boards back to the state of Kansas, contribute to a mandatory savings account accessible to them upon release, and pay court-ordered restitution of child support. This is structured, accountable employment, not unpaid labor. Participants are contributing financially while gaining valuable experience. They would also contribute back to the state through income taxes and room and board, and will be better equipped to secure housing, transportation, and employment upon the release with access to accumulative savings accounts. This would also allow inmates to obtain certifications and trade skills to get jobs afterwards. The compliance and fair market practices, based on my conversations with entities that partner within Hutchinson Correctional Facility, would be required to follow the same safety standards, inspections, and regulatory requirements as any comparable business operating outside the facility. There are no shortcuts to my knowledge. Any manufactured or modular homes produced under contract with HCF would be subject to HUD standards, Kansas building codes, contractual quality control and inspection requirements. Additionally, there is no sales tax exemptions or special supply discounts provided to these partnerships. All materials and inputs are purchased by the private partner and not Kansas Correctional Industries or the Kansas Department of Corrections. These businesses procure their supplies in the open market, pay applicable taxes, and operate under standard commercial purchasing practices. This is important because it addresses concerns about unfair competitive advantages. These partnerships operate within normal market constraints and regulatory frameworks. Modernizing state policy. Current statute prevents the Secretary of Corrections from engaging in programs that would compete with private industry. The language that may have made sense decades ago, but today Kansas faces skilled labor shortages, housing production gaps, and growing economic pressures. House Bill 2596 provides flexibility and allows decisions to be made case-by-case basis based on financial responsibility and state need. If implemented responsibly as outlined in House Bill 2596, this policy could help offset housing losses in communities like Hutchinson, increase workforce housing availability, strengthen vocational skill training in a way that is aligned with real industry demand, support financial accountability among incarcerated individuals, provide additional revenue streams for correctional programming. This is about equipping Kansas with the tools to solve real problems, not expanding government unnecessarily, but allowing innovation within our existing systems. And you'll hear from other proponents today about exactly who potentially could be partners in this in Hutchinson. Like I said, this would be applicable to any state correction facility all over the state of Kansas. So Kansas is losing housing stock. Communities are struggling to maintain affordability. Employers need workforce housing. At the same time, we have structured correctional work programs already operating responsibly and in compliance with regulatory and mandatory or market standards. House Bill 2596 provides flexibility to align these realities in a thoughtful, controlled way. For these reasons, I respectfully ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 2596, and I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, in the interest of time, we're gonna hold questions until the end.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, we have Paul Wagner. Welcome to Commerce, sir. These comments are in no way pointed at you, but all the other proponents, if we could keep it shorter so that we can get to the end of this.
2 minutes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Go ahead.
I have prepared my testimony that you have, the written testimony. I won't exactly repeat it, but I do want to make sure people understand. You know, in the prison system, there's two different ways that industrial work is done. Either the prison itself does it through Kansas Correctional Industries, and in the Prison Work Act that goes back to the 1970s, in Section A and B, you can see this, where they can produce it. I mean, they're doing the whole thing with their labor. I mean, they pay them 50 cents an hour, $1 an hour, super cheap, but they can only sell it to governmental agencies, fundamentally, is the case of what you have there. But there's a second part of the Prison Work Act, and that's what this bill specifies, is where the prison has private companies come and set up shop in the prison, or that they're working in conjunction. In that case, just like Representative Sweely said, you know, they're paying a market wage. It's been a great program from this. Not only are they able to pay restitution, they can pay child support. They can accumulate money for themselves when their prison sentence is done. It's very much a very win-win situation as far as the prisoners are concerned. The current carve-out that we have is literally the only carve-out in the entire Prison Work Act. There is no other industry that has this carve-out except for manufactured housing. I would argue that whatever the reason was back in 15 years ago when they first got this carve-out, that the real-world implications of it, are there. That modular housing, or what is, housing built at a factory, is primarily what goes for low-income housing stock. And to open that up to where folks, and currently even the manufactured housing people, can't even work in conjunction with the prison because they're also banned just like anybody else. This would be an open-ended invitation to private organizations. Whoops, I'm gonna kill this, sorry. Thank you. I hit it twice. But again, I think this is a very fair bill. I think there's some very good benefits to it to the state and to the prison system. And I urge your support, and I'll wait for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative Wagner. Next up, Deborah Tufel, Hutchinson Chamber. Welcome to Commerce. Welcome back to Commerce.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Tarwater and committee. Thank you for allowing us to tell you a little bit about why we support House Bill 2596. My name is Deborah Tufel, and I'm the president and CEO of the Hutchinson-Reno County Chamber of Commerce. And we are clear proponents of this bill and have been working with a coalition of partners to institute programs that impact affordable housing for our community. And we believe this is one that could dramatically impact it. And it's for many reasons. The obvious things, and I know you want us to keep this short, and so I won't restate the things that Representatives Wheely and Wagner already shared with you. But the reason that we are around the table with partners is that we are at a critical juncture with the lack of affordable housing in Reno County. As Representative Wheely shared, we are tearing down more homes than we are constructing, and we are working in all aspects of housing construction to try to remedy that. But the current reality is we represent 750 businesses and members across Reno County who every year cite housing as the #1 reason that they are having a hard time attracting workforce. About 9,500 people commute into Reno County for jobs, and one of the reasons they're commuting in rather than living there is because of lack of affordable housing options. And so we think this is a responsible way to work towards infill housing and remedy that. I submitted several written testimonies from partners around the table, and the first one of those is Hutchinson Community College. They are willing to be a partner in this. They already have a construction trades program that works to train individuals, and they want to be able to do that for residents of the correctional facility, and they have a good model for that. And they, as Dr. Paramore, who I submitted written testimony from, said it's a win-win. Students gain high-demand trade skills. The participants build pride of ownership in something and accountability that they can take with them when they re-enter. Contractors gain a future workforce and a talent pipeline, and the community gains much-needed housing units. The city cited one of the reasons that they have a land bank that they want to fill, and they have 12 lots ready in Hutchinson waiting for a product just like this that could be moved in as infill housing. You're also going to hear from some of our nonprofits, and the one speaking for them is Clint Nelson with Interfaith Housing. He's also working with New Beginnings, and the two CEOs of those organizations have decades of experience in housing programs that help people in our community. They want to be able to be a partner and perhaps be the partner. They have a general contractor. In fact, they have 3 general contractors on their staff that are willing to help run a program just like this. I've also submitted testimony from the Hutchinson Community Foundation. Our foundation has a key focus in creating housing solutions for our community, so much so that the foundation is raising money to address housing to the tune of $2 million to help with seed funds for a variety of affordable housing solutions. And so why does infill and affordable housing matter for Reno County? We did a housing needs assessment 2 years ago, and it cited that we need 1,000 new housing units over the next 10 years. We think this is one small piece of the solution to that in the entry-level and median housing market. Much of our housing stock predates 1960. We also have 42% of our workforce are ALICE families, asset limited, income constrained. They are working, but it's very hard for them to afford housing. This could be one solution to that. So in closing, lack of housing is a Kansas issue, not just a Hutchinson and Reno County issue, and we urge your support of House Bill 2596. Thank you, and I'll stand for questions.
Okay, next up we have online Clint Nelson, Interfaith Housing.
Yes, sir.
Are you there?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having me virtually today. I apologize I couldn't attend in person. My name is Clint Nelson. I'm the president and CEO of Interfaith Housing and Community Services here in Hutchinson. And I would echo all of the testimony of my partner proponents. And so for my time here, I would like to key on the work of Interfaith over the last 35 years and why I do believe this opportunity could be scalable and really move the needle on the housing trends that we're seeing here locally. One key data point that I want to share with this committee is in numerous recent housing studies, it is determined that Hutchinson, Kansas has a rental to homeowner ratio of 48% rental, 52% homeownership. And that's a statistic that continues to move in the wrong direction. Part of that reasoning is our community is divided very much into a southern and northern half, with some rapidly decreasing valuations on the southern half. And as Deborah shared, we have been very intentional and proactive about removing those abandoned and blighted properties that cannot be rehabbed. At the same time, Interfaith has acquired and rehabbed a number of properties to keep those in the housing stock. But we're seeing over the last 10 years, we have parcels sitting all over town that really need a housing product that makes sense for that neighborhood in that price point. We absolutely need homes in the 150 plus minus range. We have currently Interfaith has 2 infill new construction units, about 50% complete. Tracking those numbers, you absolutely could not build those units without some subsidy or grant dollars. So our intention here is to find the product, develop the programming. We absolutely believe establishing a home building program within our correctional facility will allow us to bring down those costs of construction and hopefully really, redirect the trend of what we're seeing with our housing. Interfaith is committed to not only being a proponent and a supporter, but as Deborah mentioned, we have 3 Class A licensed general contractors on staff. We have some great, healthy relationships with our local government and other agencies, and we believe we could play a key role in making this a very successful program. So I strongly encourage you to consider this bill and the impact it could have not only on the future housing situation in Hutchinson, but other like communities throughout the state. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any other proponents? We have a lot of written proponents, and they're all on the S drive. I will open it up to questions for the 3 proponents that are in the room. Any questions, committee? Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure who wants to address this. Page 2 of the bill, lines 1 and 2, it almost seems like these can only be sold to state agencies. Who is the intent that these could be sold to?
Charles, can you address that? Was that just the current statute?
Chairman, so I'm looking at the bill and I'm not sure where there would be a provision that limits the sale. The strikeout there you see, perhaps the reference is to the title. I don't see a limitation in the title. And yeah, so I guess I would need further direction to answer the question.
Representative King.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that that I'm looking at it correctly, or these can be sold to anybody outside and not to state agencies. And
Mr.
again,
Chairman.
Representative Sweeley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative King, that would be what the statute actually says currently. So back, oh gosh, I think early 2000s, they had a program like this through the prisons to be building game warden shelters at the state and local parks. So this would be just changing or correcting language to allow it to be the manufactured and modular housing sold to, or partnership with the private businesses.
Are there any other questions for the 3 conferees in the room? Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. for any three of you, what would be the size and the number of prisoners that you would have in this workforce?
Can you say that again? I couldn't hear you.
So what would be the number of prisoners or the size of your workforce you're planning to put in on this program? Like how many prisoners would be working with your bill?
I don't have the exact answer to that, just in terms of whatever prison participated. And this is why I didn't bring it up, but there is, thank you, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, but there is a program like this established in Iowa in 2019 that is actually ran by the Department of Corrections. So it's not like this. I didn't want it to be government competition at all. But in that program, they built 150 houses since 2019, and they've had 160 participating inmates in that program in Iowa. And this is different, completely different. I'm not trying to have DOC involved in this.
Chairman?
Representative Corbett.
A follow-up might be, I thought I heard one of the proponents say that you're going to pay a competitive salary to what they would be making in the non-prisoner workforce.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Corbett. So Kansas Correctional Industries establishes that there has to be a fair market wage to these workers in these work release or these partnership programs. And like I said, if any of you guys are familiar with Seat King, they make seats for the riding lawnmowers of Big Dog and Hustler, I believe, and it's at Hutchinson. And their employees through the prison or inmates are making anywhere from $10 to $12 to $15 and potentially earning $20,000 to $40,000 per year. So it's not like the old misconception of what prison labor was back in the day, that it's 25 cents an hour or anything like that. And then obviously they're required, the list that I had of paying state and federal income tax, 25% goes straight to room and board to the state of Kansas. And then also they have a mandatory savings account they have to participate in.
And I guess where I'm going with this is if you're paying them about the same and they're making the money, I mean, I would think there would be some people in Hutchinson or in the area that are, might be out of work that could use the money who are already paying taxes in Kansas. Unless they're getting one heck of a savings by coming through the prison, I don't get it. But I'd be hard to believe that you're totally 100% employed in your surrounding area, that you'd have to go to the prisoners to build your product.
I believe that question, that could be in the form of a question for the Hutchinson Chamber. Are there a lack of skilled labor employees to work for modular housing in the Hutchinson area?
The construction trades is definitely one of the skilled trade areas that we have a shortage of. It's also one of the highly demanded programs at our Hutchinson Career and Technical Education Academy and a program run by Hutchinson Community College. They are putting as many students through those construction trades programs as they have capacity for. The example of that was cited by Dr. Paramore in her letter. And they're also working on a Frames grant program right now that's building some model homes. But the main thing is most of our contractors have a shortage. That's one of the reasons why it's so very hard for some of our traditional housing developers to go out and find new workforce. So one of our hopes is that through reentry, if we help people who are currently incarcerated learn a skill when they're reentering the workforce, they could go directly to work for one of our local contractors, which there is a shortage right now. Yes.
Representative Bohai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. There will be a question, but also I have a brief statement. I got to go visit an organization up in Leavenworth that had a similar project where they had inmates learning how to do welding and different things, and we're paying them well. And then that creates a workforce that can go and partner with several different, I can't remember the names of the organizations right now, and companies across the state of Kansas. But one small anecdotal story I remember of it is a gentleman who had been there for a long time. Also, if they're in the program, they want to stay in the program because, talk about reliable workforce, they're there, was able to help his daughter's wedding. Like, he wasn't able to go to the wedding because he was still incarcerated, but he was able to help fund some of it. So I feel like this program is great because not only does it help pay off like victims and pay for their room and board and create that savings account, but it lets them potentially interact in a way that is beneficial back to their families and to the victims. My question is this: with the modular homes, they don't only have to be sold in Hutchinson, correct? Like the modular homes could be sold in different parts of the state. Am I correct?
Yeah, the bill is not limited to Hutchinson, but it was written by the two Hutchinson representatives.
Thank you, sorry.
All right, any further questions? Okay. I have one question. So there is consternation on the bill from some opponents that says that this is an interference with local businesses. Is this not for a local business or a private business to contract with the prison for the employees? And they would still have all the expenses of having to have the tools, or does the prison have the tools?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, you are correct. It wouldn't even be able to be possible unless a private business actually partners with the Department of Corrections. And the opponents, I introduced a bill similar to this. It's a little bit different last year, and we've had the whole year to negotiate or discuss and try to get everybody on board, and it ultimately didn't come to that. But it's DOC has the partnership and supplies workers, and they do it on site. But everything else, supplies, materials, everything else is purchased by that private partnership, and they have to pay the same wage or the same sales tax and every regulation that everyone else has to follow. There's nothing different from when they sell a house to a modular manufacturing housing association member selling a house to the exact same entity. To my knowledge, that's what I've been on the phone with partnerships today.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and close the proponent section and open the opponents, and that would be Martha Newsmith, Kansas Manufacturing Housing Association. Welcome to Commerce Committee, Martha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am Martha Smith. I'm the Executive Director for Kansas Manufactured Housing Association, and I appreciate the opportunity to present comments today. Over the past 20-some years, KMHA has looked at a lot of proposals which allow the Department of Corrections to build and sell homes. However, this is the first proposal that we have seen that allows the Secretary of Corrections to partner with a private industry or a private business and basically build the homes within the prison using prison labor. When I first saw this, I did ask the Department of Correction what guidelines, what oversees this partnership? Because it's not really, there's not a lot in statute other than that it can't displace current workers. So the Department of Corrections was kind enough to send me, and I attached it to my testimony. It's called Prison Industry Enhancement Certification Program. I'm going to call it PICEP for ease. So under the PICEP program, and it was created to allow certain prison work programs to sell goods on the open market. And the overseer of this program is the Bureau of Justice Assistance, BJA. So when you look through the guide and you look up what is goods, it says, as tangible items, wares, and merchandise. There is no mention throughout the guide about building, construction, home building, construction services, housing, building codes, residential structures, nothing, only goods and wares. So that is a concern for us that we're not covered by the federal guides that the other programs are, like Seat King in Hutch. So I reached out to BJA to ask them if, in fact, manufactured or modular housing would be covered under the PICEP rules. I emailed, I have not received an email back. I called and left a message. I did get a message back, but the message, he said that was really outside of his scope, and he was going to track down whoever would, of course, cover that question. So that is a big concern. So I reached out again to my counterparts throughout the United States. I only did it yesterday, and they are all on a fly-in to DC, but I did get 9 responses back from Georgia, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Missouri, Minnesota, and I said Wisconsin already, 9 of them. None of them had a PICEP home building program of any type. So that is our first concern, is that we're not covered under these guidelines. So what are we covered under? So if you get past that, there are 4 other areas that we feel provide the PICEP partner advantages that the private industry does not have access to. And those are, first of all, a workforce, a steady workforce. Unfortunately, there's not a shortage of inmates, and they have no recruitment cost, no advertising costs, no interviewing time from employees interviewing, because the Department of Corrections handles that. They say who gets to work in the program. The second area of concern is lower overhead. PICEP guidelines, I don't know if you're ever bored and have insomnia, this is what you need to pick up. But the guidelines are extremely vague. When I tried to figure out what the PICEP partner would have to pay for, the only thing I found was on page 11, and it says, the private sector partner pays a predetermined fee covering labor, overhead, and a profit to the certificate holder. The certificate holder is the Department of Corrections. So I looked up, what labor are we talking about? Are we talking only about the prison labor? Are we talking about the labor for the training? Are we talking about the labor for the accounting process? What labor are we what are we paying for? There's no definition. Also, what overhead is covered? Is it rent? Is it security? Is it utilities? Is it the actual utility bill for the space that the project is working under? HR costs, payroll and administrative support, are all those included in overhead? Because for the private industry, those are costs that we have to pay for. Then throughout the guide, it talks about a prevailing wage. And that's great if it's a prevailing wage. However, the PICEP program participant can ask for what is called a training wage. And that's found on page 18. They have to ask permission and get approved for a training wage. But it is below prevailing wage. It is a calculation, and I mean, it's written out there. I didn't calculate it out. But let's say if for our industry, our entry level is $15 an hour, the training wage can start lower than that, let's say at $12 an hour. And the first inmate that comes on board, they are paid $12 an hour for up to 480 hours. Then they're supposed to go to the next level of pay, which is still below the prevailing wage. And there are 3 tiers, and they can work for this below entry-level wage for the private sector for up to 1,440 hours, or basically 36 weeks. We feel, again, that gives a distinct advantage to the PICEP partner. The next area that we have concerns about is The incarcerated worker does not receive health insurance, retirement contribution, paid leave, or overtime. Just those 4 items can increase labor costs anywhere from 20 to 40%. You heard a couple of weeks ago from Dr. Langhofer, who talked about housing costs and what escalates, what are the drivers for housing cost increases. He said material cost, infrastructure, and labor cost. So a big part of housing costs is the labor cost, and through the PISEP program, the PISEP participant can get reduced wages for their workers. Another area of concern that we have is the lack of oversight on this program. If you try to find how often...
Hey, Martha, I'm going to have to ask you to kind of wrap it up.
Okay.
We do have your written testimony in front of
Okay,
us,
sure.
and it's pretty repetitive on
Sure.
cost, so.
Okay, cost, right. So anyway, we did reach out to the Hutch facilities, and I was called a couple of times, and we were supposed to have a conference call in November, December. I was never called on that. I did provide them a list of concerns that we had. And I said, we are standing ready and willing to work with you. Just let us know. We have 3 manufacturers in the state. All of them build modular homes. All of them are either working with or have worked with affordable housing groups. In fact, right now, one of the builders is working with Northwest Kansas Economic Innovation Center. Another is working on an RHID project. So we're here, we're ready to work, but these programs, or this program, we feel will undercut the existing builders in the state.
Okay, so would one of those companies be interested in contracting with the prison?
I have asked my members consistently about if they would want to participate in the program, and at this point in time, no, but I haven't asked them since this has been released.
Right, because our previous bills have always just allowed the prison to build them and then sell them, and that was, that was a non-starter because it would kind of compete with the other companies. But if one of your companies, one of these massive companies, could contract with the prisons, don't you think that'd be a good thing for one of your companies?
Well, first of all, there's of the 3 builders that we have, 2 of them are pretty small. They are not corporate
Would
structure.
they like the opportunity to grow?
Yeah. Well, I will certainly ask again. I have asked consistently.
And then I do understand some of your concerns here as far as like the cost of labor and the training labor. And those are things I think that we could put into the bill, that they can't do the training labor and that they'd have to be assigned a fair rent and that kind of thing to make the playing field kind of even. If we could get to that, would that be something you could support, or are you just dead set against this all across the board?
Well, we'd look at it certainly, but it is the camel's nose under the tent, we feel. And I did provide a list of just those things, that they have to have an independent third-party inspection, they have to sell through their, be licensed, provide the proper documentation for licensure, all of the requirements. That was all on the list.
Okay. Committee, any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm not seeing any other opponents. We do have written-only opponent from the Kansas Chamber, and I'll close the hearing on HB 2596. I'm going to draw your attention to HB 2588, and that's the electrician bill, and get a brief description from Revisor Reimer on what the bill does.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. So the bill before you provides for statewide licensure of electricians. It provides for that licensure under the Board of Technical Professions. And I'll just limit it at that. I think we had a hearing on that. So thank you, Chairman.
All right. It's pretty simple bill as he explained it, but it's kind of quite complicated actually. So any questions on what the bill does? All right, seeing none, for purposes of discussion, Representative Wilcott with an amendment, and I'd like you to explain your amendment as they're handing it out.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the amendment that's coming out after the hearing ended up getting a lot of the parties together that had some of the issues with it. There was some opposition around some of the training hours. There was some other feedback. So the amendment's going to change a couple of items. The first one is going to be that municipalities that currently don't have licensing are going to be forced to with the original. So there's an amendment in here that basically says municipalities have the right to not require a license. But if they do require a license, then it would default to the state. The second change is making the effect starting July 1st of 27, as the agency that would be overseeing these licenses at the state would not have time to be able to stand something up in 26. There is the licensing hours. So on page 2 of the amendment, you'll read the 8,000 hours was one of the main concerns that the original bill did not include enough. So there's some licensing hours that would incorporated to that. There is a grandfather clause that has been added to that, which would be on page 2 as well on section D. And if the chair would allow, I do have some extra language I would like to add to that that would expand additional grandfathering in, that the amendment did not quite cover everybody on that grandfather side. So if you're okay with it, I would like to add a little extra language to it.
Is that something you can hand out?
I don't have enough copies, but I would be more than happy to hand out. I can get enough copies and email it to the whole.
Go through the rest of your amendment, and I'll let you read that.
Perfect.
Okay.
And then the last, which is the largest one, is the Board of Technical Professions had some major concerns. So we ended up changing the Board of Technical Professions to the State Fire Marshal's office that has a division inside of them, an industrial division inside the State Fire Marshal's office. So it's changing it to that, and then adding a board under that division to basically monitor this instead of the Board of Technical Professions.
Okay, and go through your additions.
So the additional one basically is on page 2, section 2D. I'm basically going to be adding the sentence of, nor shall any person be required to be examined who, on or before July 1st, 2027, provides to the State Fire Marshal documented proof of a minimum of 8,000 hours of field experience as defined in subsection E, or documented proof of completion of a registered apprenticeship program approved by the United States Department of Labor. And that came from the trade organization. Basically was saying, hey, a lot of their members would not be grandfathered in with the original language.
Okay.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we don't have page 2.
Okay, so we don't have all the pages of this amendment.
I can get it all printed off.
Trust me.
Right.
Chairman?
Yes, Charles.
Chairman, I would just ask Representative Wilcott to ensure that the language that he has provided, the new language, is consistent with the language in the box, and I'm sure he's done this already. I'm just, crossing the X. In the box in the middle of page 2, subsection F. In that box toward the side in the middle of page 2, there is also a sort of a grandfathering provision, and I just want to ensure that those provisions are consistent. Thank you.
Okay, so none of us have page 2, but those of us that have access to the S drive might. Would you be able to email that to members? Committee, any questions or discussion on what the amendment does or The intent of the amendment? Representative Osmond, were you wanting just to tell us that we didn't have every other page? Okay.
Yeah.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the questions that was brought up to me is this more for the unions that are having issues, or is it going to hurt local electricians that have a lot of apprentices or people that are learning on the job?
Representative Wilcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through the discussions of this, there was discussions that included unions, representation from the unions, as well as multiple trade organizations and individual electricians. So it was a broad to try to bring every player that was in the industry, and there seems to be a unified agreement that this is a good thing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Wilcott, can you review what the intent of this bill? What is the problem that you're trying to solve with this? Just go through that real quick.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So today, the electrical licensing is controlled at the municipality level because we don't have a state license. And so there's, across the state, kind of different set rules around that. Some areas have licenses, some have different licensing requirements. So the state of Kansas is about one of a handful of states that don't have a statewide license. And a number of electricians have started with one and has grown as we come about, ultimately trying to get Kansas to a point where we can have interstate reciprocity with our licensing so our electricians can go to other states and have their Kansas license recognized. No state will recognize a municipal license, but they will recognize a state license.
Okay, any questions on that? All right, seeing none, have you emailed the? Okay, the amendment is coming to you by email. If you guys would look at it. Any questions?
Chairman,
Representative Corbett.
to the representative, is the 8,000 hours pretty competitive with our neighbors, and is that kind of the number that everybody seems to settle on to be licensed?
Representative Wilcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that seems to be not only the standard for all of our neighbors, it's also the standard pretty much across the country. And it's been the target we would look at, again, for the ultimate goal of reciprocity. That seems to be the standard, and the electricians around the states, both from a private and a union side, all agree that that's a good number.
Representative Wilcott, can you tell us, is that a higher number than some municipalities require?
So I did have research go through and try to look at what we do across the state in different municipalities. I don't have that document in front of me, so I will recall, to the best of my ability. I believe we do have one municipality in the southern part of the state that has a lower number today, but they have additional requirements on top of that. So I don't know where that would balance out when you add those additional requirements.
What's the number?
I want to say it was 4,000, and then there were some other requirements on top of that.
And then is there anything in this bill that has lower hours for home electricians rather than?
So if you take a look at the licensing, there's three groups. There's a residential residential electrician, a journeyman electrician, and a master electrician. So that residential electrician would kind of fall into that traditional aspect of an apprentice, but that falls into that residential, I think that you're referring to.
So how many hours are they required to have to make it work?
So they would have 930 hours of trade, of schooling to be able to qualify for that.
Okay. Any other questions? Any questions on the amendment? We need a second on the amendment. Representative King. Representative Wilcott, you may close.
Thank you, Chair. I close. I ask that we adopt the amendment.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no. Motion passes. Are there any further discussion or amendments on this bill? Okay, seeing none, Representative Wilcott, you can make a motion to pass favorably as amended, since it's your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask that the body recognize and adopt the motion to accept the bill as amended.
Pass out favorably?
Yes, please.
All right, Representative Bohai seconds it. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no.
Chairman.
Motion passes, sorry. We're out of time.
Chairman.
Charles, you had something that you want some leeway? You want some grace?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Some grace, thank you.
Okay. All right, committee, yeah, we'll give you grace. Charles, is that okay with the maker and the second? Yes, yes, okay. Committee, I was going to work another bill that was kind of complex, but we're going to skip over that. And we're going to work the bill that we just heard, since there doesn't seem to be any problems with it, but I need a 2/3 vote to allow that to happen because we heard it today. So all in favor of working that bill, raise your right hand.
Just
okay,
point
sorry.
Of clarification.
Go ahead.
2719 or
yes.
the other one?
I'm sorry, 2719, you're correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Not the prison bill. So. Okay. Motion passes. We'll go ahead and work the bill. So on 2719, I don't think we need to get a description of what the bill does because we just heard it. Are there any discussion on the bill or suggested changes? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and make a Vice Chair Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 2719 favorably for passage.
All right, committee, we need a second. Representative Wassinger. Okay. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since it's a non-controversial bill and no amendments, I move that we put it on the consent calendar.
Is that okay with the second? Okay. All right. Committee, you heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no. Motion passes. All right. We're adjourned and we will see you Monday morning. Thank you.